Okay.
Welcome, everybody. Okay, now we are going to be starting. There's a lot of people here, and the way we're doing this is Selena's my co-host. Selena will pop on here. She's here. She just has herself, she doesn't have her video on. But when you have questions, it looks like we already have quite a few questions, but we're going to try to hold them to the end because this masterclass, we're trying to keep it to an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right. So as you all know, probably, I'm Julie Olson. I hosted the summit, Healthy Body, Healthy Hair, The Truth About Hair Loss. That's where a lot of you found us from. And this is a post-summit masterclass. And we'll also be having some discounted package options at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. All right. So the approach I have to hair loss is truly a whole new approach. And if you're struggling with hair shedding, brittle hair, hair thinning, dull hair, being told that everything's normal, being told it's all in your genes. I get that all the time. There isn't much you can do, or medications are the only answer. And that's what happened to me. Or the fact is that miracle cures just don't work, and neither does one size fits all. And most importantly, hair loss is a gift. It really is. And this is why. I've been in your shoes. Again, I saw massive amounts of hair in the shower, feeling insecure, avoiding intimacy, running out of ways to hide all my spots of hair loss, constant fear of losing more hair, afraid of the dangers and side effects of medication, and just feeling alone and unheard. I was completely dismissed by the medical community, telling them everyone told me there was nothing I could do. So I really consider hair loss a gift because it made me finally realize that I needed to address other health symptoms. And truly, I would have just gone on my fast-paced lifestyle if it wasn't for the hair loss. So I consider it a gift, and I consider it a gift for you all for being here, because there's something underlying that's out of balance that's causing that hair loss. And I'm on a mission to help others overcome hair loss naturally, as I did myself. So are you ready to say goodbye to hair loss and say hello to a happy, healthier you? How would you like a chance to feel normal again before stress, poor food choices, hair loss, of course, and, well, life got in the way? So I'm introducing today in this masterclass my Healthy Hair Fix. It's the only program designed to get to the underlying root, yes, pun intended, of your hair loss and regrow your hair like you deserve. And there are 3 steps: identify, nourish, and grow. And the catalyst, the base of this program is natural solutions, detective work, and a personalized strategy. The best part of it that's inside this program is you're going to heal your gut so you can grow hair. Believe me, if your gut's not healthy, nothing else is going to be in balance, and your hair gets the last of the nutrients and love anyway. So you really need to become master of your unique healthy body blueprint, figure out which foods fuel healthy hair and which foods wreak havoc on your hair and health. Food is medicine or it's poison. So we'll figure out what's right for you. And then also this program will help you combat fatigue and access a completely natural source of energy you haven't experienced probably for years, and get rid of any food allergies or sensitivities, some you might not even know you're suffering from. And the side effects experienced by most of my clients is they're eating more and weighing less. Here's my team, because it does take a village. That's an African proverb. But we have Selena, and we have Mahaya. She was a speaker on the summit, and so is Dave Gordon. Mahaya is actually an integrative pharmacist. Dave Gordon's an MD, and he's certified in functional medicine. And then Holly Parker is a certified functional health coach. All right, so moving on, just so we get through this. This really is a whole new approach because hair loss is complex. Like you heard on the summit, there's over 50 causes, but there's no one size fits all approach because there's a lot of overlap. So this is the hair loss matrix. You know, the stress runs into the inflammation. The hormones are because of the stress or nutrient deficiency. It's just an all one vicious circle matrix. And that's why we need to do detective work. Because really there is a known association between dysbiosis, which is an unhealthy gut, inflammation, leaky gut, malabsorption, and hormonal imbalances. Inevitably, you are going to have hair loss. The foundation is creating a personalized timeline, looking for triggers, and not only creating a personalized timeline, let me go back. We look at your timeline because the hair loss didn't start last month, last year. It builds up just like any disease in your body. I mean, this is not a disease, but it's a red flag. It's a sign, it's a symptom. And it takes years for it to get to this place. So we really look at your history, your labs. We look at everything you can give us, and we really listen to your story and look for triggers, patterns, stressors. And we also really look to identify metabolic imbalances. So Selena, you want to jump in here? This is your expertise. Selena is the one that does the genetics in my practice, and she has her own practice too that specializes in genetics. So
Sure. Awesome. Thanks so much. I was trying to answer questions, a bunch of questions. So first, let me just confirm that everybody can hear you now. I know in the beginning we were working on tech issues and I got a ton of messages that you couldn't be heard. I think everyone can hear you. So if not, can you guys let us know that you still can't hear us and we will fix that.
Oh, you know what? I need to get this closer, my microphone.
Well, I can hear you just perfectly fine. So I'm assuming everyone else can, but I just want to make sure because I know there was like a bunch of messages there. But as we're going here, digging deeper, like your genes. So the genes is a really important component on hair loss. And when we talk about the genes, what we are looking at, what Julie and I are looking at are these metabolic genes. So there are genes where you have, more like disease type genes. And those are the ones that we really can't do much about. So those genes are not, when we look at our SNPs, like you're getting, for instance, 23andMe or Ancestry or the genetic test that we do, these are our metabolic genes. And so these are ones that we can influence. And they're different part of our biochemistry and our metabolic pathways. So some of the top ones in hair loss are the ones listed here, like the SALT1A1 has with like your sulfur transport, collagen, biotin, IGFR, the CYPs, like the CYP19, a lot of that is in, for instance, like your estrogen and your sex hormone pathways. So these pathways we can influence. And it's really important that we understand the difference between different kinds of genes, the ones that we can't really do much about, and then the other ones that really open the doors for us to impact our health. Now, if you want to click the next slide. The other thing that we're going to look at is beyond just the ones that are tied directly to hair growth are the other components and why we need to look at things like digestive health, inflammatory response, our methylation and hormones. So the digestive health ones are, I think, one of the top ones that I find that are the most important, because what happens with a lot of those that we work with is that they've been, trying all the right things and doing the right things, eating the right foods, but they can never get success where they're, have lasting success. And when you have things such as a food 2 SNP, well, then your microbiome usually needs a little bit of extra help, or you may not have the best with B12 absorption and transport. And so missing out on just the base digestive SNPs and the information from that can be sometimes that missing link as to why it is that why don't the protocols work for me? Or why are, I'm doing these things and I'm just not quite getting, that last 10 or 15%. But then also like the inflammatory response, really looking at when that's upregulated, a lot of those inflammatory or the immune response SNPs, then instead of being slower, it can be faster. So now we create more inflammation. And then if on the flip side, some of our detox SNPs or some other things in the regulation of the antioxidant side of things are slow, now we have a huge fire and we don't have enough fire hoses to put it out. So again, that's where, it's really important to look at these other genetic SNPs to kind of understand where we might have, potentially, just because we haven't doesn't mean they're going to express. We have that, predisposition for some different challenges. And so are your genes destined for hair loss? No, not necessarily. So while there are, again, some genes that are disease genes, we are not talking about those. The majority of the genes that we have, that we can influence those genes. So the genes that, our metabolic genes will be influenced by the things that we eat, by our experiences, by the stresses. Even goes back to what our mother's health was like whenever we were developing, because that was what our body, that was the world of our body at that particular time. And so by, eating really good, taking good care of ourselves, doing self-care, getting adequate sleep, having the right amount of activity at the right time of day, then it helps to make our health bodies, work more efficiently. And so that's where the study of epigenetics, nutrigenomics, those kinds of things help us to influence those genes. So when we can influence those genes, we can influence for the better, but we can also influence them for the worse. So it kind of goes both ways. And that's where you hear a lot of times like in autoimmunity that, oh, it was something, an environmental factor as to why you got autoimmunity. Well, those environmental factors are what influences our genes to where things all of a sudden we have a lot of cellular damage. So we're not necessarily destined to hair loss. We may be predisposed to have more challenges than others that leads to hair loss, but there's so much that we can do to influence most of our genes. So the other part is genes help us to connect the dots. So that's kind of the main takeaway whenever you look at your genomics, is not necessarily to get a whole list of, well, what supplements do I take because of a SNP, but they help us to understand what could potentially be some of the underlying causes, which of those rabbit holes should we go down, different strategies to support metabolic pathways, knowing like, for instance, that food 2 SNP, we know that you more than likely are going to need probiotics, support much more than someone who doesn't have that food 2 SNP. So whenever we see those different genetic SNPs, it just gives us an idea as to like the long-term maintenance might be different for somebody else. And so that's where it really does just connect the dots in this whole matrix to make it a lot more simplified. So the different types of hair loss, I'm just back in here, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear now.
Let me look and see.
Yeah, I'm looking in the notes.
It looks
like it.
I think that they said they're hearing fine. So everyone says they're hearing fine is what I've got here. Okay. So I think we should be good.
Okay, great.
Yep.
This.
Yep. So just different types of hair loss. I think you want to jump back in here, Julie, on the hormonal, digestive, inflammatory.
Yeah. I have these notes. I can't see.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I showed you that tree earlier, and I couldn't even fit all the causes of hair loss on that tree. But fortunately, I have put them into 4 main root causes. And that is hormonal, digestive, inflammatory, and stress-induced, which I did talk a lot about on the summit. And most speakers talked about all these as well, but they had some of their specialties and so forth. But this really does encompass and address all types of hair loss. And the top triggers of hair loss, there's 12 of them that I've categorized as. Dysbiosis is number 1, an unhealthy, unbalanced gut. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies or surpluses. You can get too many nutrients. You can be taking too many supplements. You can really jack up your system. You can get too much biotin. Drives me crazy. Okay. Hormonal issues, such as thyroid issues, Hashimoto's, high DHT, that's a type of testosterone, PCOS, and more. Alopecia. So alopecia, there's different types of autoimmune alopecia. Alopecia in general is the name for hair loss, and it's but alopecia there's different types within that umbrella that are autoimmune. So that means the hair follicle gets attacked by your own body. It's an autoimmune condition. Okay, so the 5th one is increased in mental, physical, or emotional stress. The 6 are toxins. such as mold and heavy metals, and there's a lot more, but toxins in general. 7, drastic changes to your diet or exercise. 8, chronic inflammation. 9, gluten, food sensitivities, intolerances, or allergies. That's a big one. 10, detoxification issues, poor circulation. You know, people are so sedentary nowadays. They're not getting those nutrients to their scalp. You need to also get out the bad to get in the good. And a lot of people's detox pathways are just clogged up, and they're not pooping, they're not detoxing. And yet you need that for a healthy body and healthy hair. Number 11 is candida yeast fungal overgrowth. That all starts in the gut as well. And 12, pathogens, parasites. But looking over all this, you know, they all can be related to our gut health. So let's jump in here. It's really, really important to investigate root causes and imbalances. So to the rescue is my program called the Healthy Hair Fix. Some of your steps, like we said earlier, we have it into 3 simple steps: identify, nourish, and grow. Step 1 is identify, my favorite part. And I do go through these 5 R's. I call it a framework. So the first phase is the most important and can often take the longest, because you have to remove those stressors that are affecting your environment, your GI tract. It could be even some stressors in relationships or your job. Whatever is stressing you as a whole person, we need to remove them or get them balanced out and then replace. And that's where we replace your body with digestive secretions to restore proper digestion. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the reason I decided to become a nutritionist, a functional medicine nutritionist, which is different than a dietitian, but because, you know, that's how we live. It's not the nutrients we take in per se, it's the nutrients we absorb. So I'm really, really big on this replace, because a lot of clients come to me when they first start with me and they're eating great, they're doing everything right, but they're not absorbing their nutrients, and that's how we survive. Okay, and number 3, repopulate, and that would be recolonizing with healthy beneficial bacteria, supplementation, and foods. First and foremost, foods. And this would be different for somebody that has SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. We have to be really careful with probiotics. So again, there's no one size fits all approach here, but these are the 5 R's of the framework that I follow. A lot of, it's a framework we were taught. Actually, I was taught through the Institute of Functional Medicine. Okay, so moving on, repair. Repair is also vitally important, but it's also vitally important to go in order, because if you don't, then you can waste a lot of time and money, and you'll understand as I go through more of these slides. But repair is helping repair damage to the gut by supplying key nutrients that are often in short supply with a compromised gut and immune system. And remember, about 80% of our immune system is in our gut, and we produce more serotonin in our gut than in our brain. So we want to get you feeling good so you'll eat well and have, you know, healthy lifestyle choices and move through the program successfully. That means optimizing the serotonin in your gut. Okay. And then rebalancing. So we want to address a whole body and health lifestyle choices. So we just want to make sure that all these are in place and in order so that you get to this rebalance and it's long lasting. So again, the detective work starts with the first phase, the remove phase. to identify what to remove. And like I just said, removing the stressors. It's really, really important not to skip this phase and complete it thoroughly, because if you go on to the next phases, it's like, Selena, you're good with analogies. Can you hop in here with a great analogy if you don't go in order, the 5 R's?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of like whenever we're building a house, if we start to put our furniture in and all we have is the foundation and not the walls and the roof, I mean, the furniture is all going to get ruined. We're not going to be able to, use that furniture for very long because we did not follow the steps. We have to like build the house in order. The same like with the plumbing and the wiring. We do those things, whether, it's a house or a car or, growing vegetables, we have an order to do. And so the same happens with our health. Like if we don't, remove what's causing the fire, we have like a gas leak and we don't turn off the gas, we try to put that fire, we're not going to really put it out long term. So it just, I like to usually think of buildings because I think that's a great, my father was in construction, my family was, so maybe that's why I like it so much, but I think they work really, really well.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we also need to remove the inflammation, which is a major driver of hair loss and actually every single health problem, disease, and cancer. We need to address that inflammation, figure out the sources, remove it. And there's about 12 major companies and multiple lawsuits for hair products that are causing hair loss. So we need to remove those if you're using any of them. Hair straighteners now they found can cause cancer. So also we'll look at your hair products. We need to remove cosmetics that contain any of these toxins, xenoestrogens. We need to remove just the list, but we'll provide you with lists, and it's a whole process. It's easy the way we have it set up. Selena, you need to jump in here. But we can't hear you.
Yep, I know. I thought I clicked unmute, but I guess I didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is one of my big pet peeves. And so one of the most important things that you talked about earlier was that there's a gazillion causes, right? And there's not a one size fits all approach. And the same with anti-inflammatories. So one of the things that we see often is an overuse of anti-inflammatories and long-term use. And it's like, you're not getting anywhere, or whenever you see things getting worse. And so there are some things that a lot of times are overlooked. For instance, like resveratrol. Why I love resveratrol, we use almost all of these, we use very, very often, but there's going to be exceptions to everything. So it doesn't matter, even though it's a natural product and a natural, an herb or food, too much of it at the wrong time can still be a problem. So like, for instance, resveratrol, that can cause an upset stomach for some people. So if you're seeing these kind of effects, it's your body trying to tell you that, hey, this is not the right time for that. Omegas is another really big one that we see a lot of. We're going to talk about that, I know, a little bit later here, but the biggest one that I see is that, especially in women, it's not the omega-3s, it's the omega-6s. There's a very, very healthy omega-6, your DGLA, which is super anti-inflammatory. And when you can't convert the GLA to DGLA, you're not getting that beneficial, healthy omega-6. And so, it's not just that, we need a lot more fish oil and omega-3s. Sometimes we're forgetting about the healthy omega-6s. Turmeric, and this is probably my biggest pet peeve, is turmeric. This one is definitely not a one size fits all. It is a very powerful anti-inflammatory, and it can really be super beneficial for a lot of people, especially with autoimmunity. However, there are also those with autoimmunity where it will cause them to flare like no other flare they've had. So this one is one that we're usually very cautious with, and why we do some of the testing we're going to talk about later, because in some situations how this is taming down that inflammation, you're not going to get all the signaling that you need to resolve the inflammatory response. So if you have found yourself, I don't think that I respond well to turmeric, and most practitioners, I guess I shouldn't say that, but I've had people come to us and it's like, I just know this turmeric made me, have a problem. And everyone said there couldn't be. And I'm like, no, it can be. My son is one of those who he can't have turmeric. If he has turmeric, then his glucose numbers will go 300 or 400. So it really affects his type 1 diabetes in a very negative way. And so that's one, any things, they're just not a one size fits all. Vitamin D is another one that we talk a lot about because we all need vitamin D. Ideally, the sun is the best source. I mean, that vitamin D and what we get from the sun and how that affects our metabolic pathways, and especially some of the genes that we look at, those metabolic genes, the ones in your steroid hormones, all the sex hormones, it's just super important. However, we do supplement, but when we do supplement, we're going to use an oil-based and make sure we have healthy oils because you really do need, I mean, vitamin D is a steroid hormone and it's part of that fat pathway. So that's kind of the, I guess our biggest, you don't hear a lot about them and some of our pet peeves, and especially probably my biggest pet peeves on those, that I think it's really important that people understand and hear that, because you don't really hear that. You just hear a lot that, oh, just take more turmeric or more omega-3. And I mean, we're going to get more into the omega-3, so I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah. I get people come to me that bring bagfuls of supplements and they're not working for various reasons. But some of the main reasons is, think of a deck, ADEK. Those vitamins, those are fat soluble vitamins. And if you don't take with a healthy fat, or you don't have one that contains an oil base within it, you're not going to absorb it. And the same with turmeric, CoQ10, alpha lipoic acid. There's different supplements you can buy out there that could be a complete waste of your time and money. And we see it, I see it all the time. And again, I think another point of this slide is we don't want you to think that you can grow your hair and improve your health by taking supplements. It begins at the beginning, removing the stressors from your body and your environment. You've got to get that foundation before you can layer these on. And you have to figure out what's best to layer on for you. Everyone's different.
Yes.
That's why it drives me crazy. That's another reason I'm doing this, is because not only does the hair industry sell you these products and make these misguided claims that you put this serum on, your hair is going to grow and you're going to use this fancy shampoo, and now they're selling all these supplements. And now a lot of them, I'm sorry, but they're being marketed like crazy, and they have these proprietary blends. You don't know how many milligrams of in it of what. And for instance, most of them have way too much biotin. And so it's just really important to just not think you can follow just
one size fits all protocol.
Yeah, it just drives us crazy. So that's another reason for bringing this up.
Yes. We use supplements, right? But we're very targeted when we use them. It's to supplement the rest of that foundation.
And also getting quality practitioner grade supplements. And also how much, I'm really careful about how many milligrams, how many IUs are you taking of this and that. And also what food are you eating? Because there can be interactions. You can get too much, too little, and so forth. So
even right here, like on this slide, like I'm not identifying the source. So the other part with the anti-inflammatories is, for instance, like with mold, if you are still in a mold environment and you start taking a lot of things for mold, you've now dropped your defenses and you've made your body much more susceptible. So you need to know what the source of the inflammation is before we start targeting anti-inflammatory pathways, because otherwise, in many situations, or heavy metals, if you still have, a bunch of mercury, fillings in your mouth, and you try to start detoxing with that, you can be causing more problems than if we didn't address it. So understanding the source of the inflammation as part of the plan whenever you do create a strategy of what anti-inflammatories to start taking.
Okay, so it goes back to why hair loss is a gift, because if you didn't lose your hair, if I didn't lose my hair, I wouldn't have been going through all these steps and figuring out all these imbalances. So the most important thing, and why we're so excited to offer this, we're going to offer some package discounts tonight, because they offer some three functional lab. One package has 3 functional labs at a very discounted price. But anyway, so you really need to test and not guess, because we look at the results through a functional lens and conventional ranges. As you can see here, they're not optimal.
I love this graph. Yeah, I mean, because like the conventional, this is what is probably one of my, it's just so frustrating is that, and all of us can probably relate. We've gone to the doctors, we've gone to the medical system, we don't feel well. And all of our labs come back normal. And it's like, how can that be when I feel terrible? I'm losing my hair or whatever other symptoms you have. Like my son with all of his skin issues, he had all these issues leading up to the diabetes. It's like, but he was normal. It was just totally normal. But the thing is, it should be called common. Like the normal we think of, oh, that's the way that it should be. But it only means normal in the sense of, oh, this is popular and common. And so I think just very, I think it's very deceptive and just really, it's just not good for our health. And so functionally, we're going to look at them. What is an optimal range of telling us that the body is working healthy? Typically, it's going to be in the middle of the range. There's going to be some exceptions, but overall, it's a much tighter range for that, for the functional ranges. Oh, things are flying here.
Wait.
Backwards. Go the other way. Hit the arrow the other direction. Yep.
This is what I was trying to get to, folks. I'm sorry.
Yep. Go backwards or there.
Okay.
Yeah, now go forward one. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So our top labs that we do, I don't know if you want to talk also about this, Julie, but as you can see, blood work, stool testing, hormone testing, nutrients, food testing, genetic testing, mold, heavy metals. And like on the blood work, again, this is where you see the most problems with the range is just, that common range that we feel terrible.
Switch these around. Okay.
Nope, you're good.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I thought I wanted to show them that functional lab report. That's what I was looking for.
That's in the testing section. So we got it. Yep. And so then you go to the next slide.
Okay.
Yep. So inflammation and the immune response. So this is another area that I do a lot with because the autoimmunity of my son, that's where I wanted to know answers. Like, where did it come from? We had zero family history of type 1 diabetes. And up to that point, when he was 9, we were told everything was normal, even though he had skin issues and gut issues and, reflux and terrible things from day 1 of birth. He was still supposed to be a normal child. So what happened? And so as I started delving into this, it comes back to the inflammation in the immune system. And when it comes to hair loss, some of the top things that we see with that inflammation, like the drivers of where's that inflammation source, and then you have where now both of them are feeding one another, are like thyroid hormones, glucose dysregulation, and the steroid hormones. And all of those are directly tied with hair loss in some form or fashion. So one of the things that you don't know or may not know is, like, especially with thyroid, 1 in 8 out of every 8 women throughout their lifetime is going to have some sort of thyroid disease or imbalance. And women are 5 to 8 times at a greater risk of developing thyroid problems compared to men. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune in which the immune cells attack the thyroid. That's the most common type of thyroid disease. There's also Graves' disease and other thyroid, the low thyroid function and those kinds of things, which are not necessarily autoimmune. And millions of women is estimated to suffer from thyroid symptoms. And I never getting a diagnosis. And a lot of times, they're given other reasons for why they don't feel so well. And then we have our environment, the way the stress and all those kinds of things all can contribute to thyroid dysfunction. But the biggest thing is that it's very much connected with the hair loss. So you're going to have thinner tissues, thinner skin tissues, disrupted hair growth cycles because of where those thyroid hormones are. It's just going to affect those very basic functions of growth, and especially on our hair, skin, nails, and our hair.
Yeah, I have hypothyroidism myself, and you definitely have to manage it and be on top of it. And you'll lose hair.
Yes. Yes, very much. Very much. I mean, it's probably one of the top. I mean, I guess there's quite a few I could say that are top things that we see, but definitely see a lot of the hypothyroidism and thyroid dysfunction.
But you know what? It all goes back to the gut, because people don't realize that our hormones are created in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another pet peeve. And that's why we start with the gut. I mean, even Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the hormones, they can cause all these things.
Yeah, they're just like the list of symptoms goes on and on and on, right? I mean, we could have just kept going on and on, but especially with thyroid, I mean, and most things, like we all, I think, especially women, kind of know this. Yet we go to the doctors and they just still will dismiss us because all of our ranges fall in that normal range, and that's something that just really bothers me, like, so much, because it's like the symptoms are all there. Like, why are we waiting for it to just completely break? There's just zero sense of prevention, and it's just, it's very, very frustrating. It affects every cell in your body. So the thyroid is going to affect everything. And that's where you have when you're doing that detective work, it's sometimes hard to decide which came first, the chicken or the egg, because a lot of these things will perpetuate one another. So once you have the thyroid dysfunction, well, then it's going to affect every cell in the body. So now it can perpetuate any other challenges, whether it's your energy, libido, moods, hormones, weight, your skin, hair, nails, all of those things. And so now you've got, both sides of the equation just kind of fueling one another, and you're spinning in the ditch, which can be very frustrating because you're feeling worse and worse, yet you're still being told everything's normal. Insulin insensitivity. So this is probably, you can guess, another big pet peeve of mine because my son's a type 1 diabetic. And so learning as much as I can about that. What's interesting is with the insulin levels, how it affects our body just in so many ways inflammatory. So this is something else that Julie and I check is we want to know what's going on with insulin. Is there some insulin resistance and things like that brewing? Because that can cause a lot of inflammation and it can contribute directly to your microbiome on your skin. It can contribute to a lot of different yeast and fungal overgrowth, not to mention cardiovascular and the inflammatory side of things. So insulin and glucose regulation is huge when it comes to looking at some of those underlying causes of inflammation and hair loss. And this is one I don't know if you also want to talk about is the insulin. When we have insulin and insulin insensitivity, that can directly affect the DHT. And many of you probably already know the association with elevated DHT and hair loss and the problems with hair. And so this, I'm pretty sure, is from a Dutch test, or it looks like it's from a Dutch test.
Different Dutch test, yes.
Mm-hmm. So this is one of the ways we will test that is looking not necessarily the insulin, but the DHT and some of the other steroid hormones. But the two of them, they just go hand in hand. And the way it's so important to look at everything comprehensively. That's the question. Should I get tested, Julie? What do you think?
Of course you should get tested. Test, don't guess.
Yes.
So these are top functional labs to consider. Actually, some of these are conventional, but we look at them and address them functionally, like that graph you saw earlier. And you'll get this amazing functional health report. So it looks at the ranges. It looks at the ranges conventionally and functionally, and then it has, you can see a little snippet of it over here, and then it puts which ones are more out of range than the others. So this, again, these are just different
ways to look at what
right, different, and then there's explanations. So if you're wondering, why is this out of range? Why are my triglycerides in the yellow? So it'll actually give you an explanation on this report. It's a lengthy report, but it's going to be included in our packages. And then digestive imbalances. Again, like I said, it all starts in the gut. And there's 4 pillars of GI health: digestion, I'd say digestion and absorption, elimination, microfloral balance, and gut integrity. So that means, do we have enough diversity in our gut? And Selena, hop in here.
Yeah, another one of my favorite sections here. So when we get into digestion and the absorption and being able to, utilize our foods, there's a lot we need to understand when it comes to the integrity of our GI tract. And this is, again, part of where that genetics comes into play, and that, like that food 2 SNPs, for example, or things going on with histamine, because like your histamine genetic SNPs could make it where histamine is more problematic for you. So we've got, a healthy membranes on that left-hand side, or healthy membranes and healthy transporting, where the food's getting broken down by our enzymes, digestive enzymes, and then those nutrients will transport through the cells and get into our bloodstream. But when we start having inflammation, we start having stress, we start having things that are causing, roadblocks there, well, then we can start having damage on those cells. And there's a couple of different types of damage that can happen. The one we hear about almost all the time, the type of leaky gut, but there's actually 2 types of leaky gut. I'm not sure what my next slide is. Yes. So there's 2 types of leaky gut. We have the paracellular and then the transcellular. So the paracellular we hear about all the time, and most of you are probably very familiar with that. And that's usually like a zonulin mediated leaky gut. So it's going to the zonulin will trigger those tight junctions to open, much on that right side of the picture. So between the cells, there's a tight junction that kind of closes the walls to that. So the zonulin will help open that up. And then there's also the transcellular, which is going through the cells. And as you can get a little closer here, you can see that through the cells, there's a lot more damage. And so the way that I like to look at that is, I believe the next slide, if I'm remembering right, not quite yet. So yes, so there we go. So the paracellular is sort of like opening your doors and your windows. So it's like when you walk in your house, all the doors, all the windows open up. And so it's a relatively easy fix. Let's close the windows. So let's stop eating gluten. Let's look at, those kinds of things. The transcellular, however, is a different story. It's like somebody crashed through your house or crashed through the windows. You can't just go close the window because there's still a gaping hole there. So the solution to whether it's a transcellular or paracellular is a little bit different. There's some overlap. There's quite a bit of overlap in how those are addressed. But there are some differences. And whenever you have both of them, it does make it much more challenging. And you really need to set your expectations that you're going to probably take much longer than other people to see long lasting results. And some of the mediators and things that will push this and cause either one of these to happen or both of them to happen are things like food allergies, gluten sensitivity, trauma, like, head trauma. I don't remember the numbers. I should, because I've done several videos and things on this, but head trauma will lead to a leaky gut in a very, very short amount of time. And there's like this gut-brain connection. There's damage by chemicals, physical stress, infections, toxins, and then the dysbiosis will perpetuate when you start having, eating poorly. That dysbiosis can actually perpetuate all this. And now you just, again, have this endless cycle of feeding things where you're just kind of going in the ditch. So some of the tests, the top tests that we do to investigate this is like, okay, we want to know like more about data because a lot of the symptoms can overlap. But what Julie and I both like to do is we want to understand, okay, what's really going on here, what things that we can measure and be able to really target when it comes to supplements. We're very, very specific on what we use and why. So like the GI map is one of our favorite stool tests, and NutriVal is another test that we use quite a bit. Some other tests that you often see and sometimes we will use are like the Cyrix Array 2, looking at the two different types of intestinal permeability, organic acids, wheat zoomer. Those are just some other tests. I'm not sure if you want to mention anything else about those, Julie.
Yeah, I mean, the organic acids is really good because it looks at your metabolites and your methylation and it looks at nutrients as well. It looks at mold. It looks at dysbiosis. So it's another way of looking at it. Those two paired together is really nice, the GI map and the organic acids test. And here's another look at the GI map.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Selena.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, this is just like the first and last pages. I think there's so many more pages in between there. So it's nice in the GI map for us to like get to know, are there like parasites? What's your healthy microbiome look like? What does like, for instance, like your Akkermansia? And I should have put that slide on there because I mean, that's one of my pet peeves. And yours is like, is there enough of the healthy bacteria? If you don't have Akkermansia, and there's some other ones that like short chain fatty acid producing, butyrate producing bacteria, that's just going to affect everything down the line. But then also what we really, really like on this test is the last page, which tells us your like intestinal health. Oh, you can go back. Backwards. The intestinal health markers. So over there on the right-hand side, looking at what's your steatocrit, your elastase, is that pancreas, liver, gallbladder, stomach acid working well, beta glucuronidase, is there any kind of blood? And then that immune response, like your secretory IgA, that is like the lining of your GI tract. So we want that Goldilocks amount. Too much or too little is a problem. Too little is literally like having paper for the walls of your house. You cannot hang doors and windows in that paper. It would all fall apart. Too much is like there's blockades in front of your house. You can't get in and out the doors. You can't open your windows and get any sunlight in. And so we really want that into that nice, healthy range. So that secretory IgA really is super helpful. And then the anti-gliadin has to do with gluten. I mean, is your body reacting to gluten? Is there some problems going on with gluten there? And then EPX is an inflammatory marker, and the calprotectin is kind of your gold standard of inflammation in the lower bowel. So we don't want inflammation there. So we're seeing that there's a lot of inflammation. Automatically, you're not going to absorb and digest your nutrients as optimally as you could. And it's going to negatively affect, so many things just in your gut, which trickles down to things like hair loss, your hormones. I mean, those are like your top things that it's going to affect.
Yeah. And then food sensitivities, intolerance, and allergies. This is really important too, because if you do have some sort of sensitivity, allergy, and I'm going to go through the different types, but it causes a ton of inflammation, and it's usually a healthy food. So with the program, I've put together meal plans that take out, just on the top, I take out the common food allergens, like gluten, dairy, eggs, shellfish, peanuts. There's some more. I take out the nightshades. The nightshades cause inflammation. So in this program, if you get a package, it's all, you don't even have to think about what to eat. You have a grocery list. We'll get to that. But as far as this test is concerned, there's a bazillion with a B. Well, maybe not that many. There's a ton of food sensitivity tests out there, and they're a waste of time and money. This one, though, is the bomb. It's the best one, I think, out there. The reason why, and I'm going to show you, because you have these different columns. Where's my cursor? So the IgE is for food allergies. And this is really important because, someone's throat can close up and they can end up in the hospital. They can even die if their throat closes up. So you really need to pay attention to food allergies. Allergists often just test the IgE, but most other food sensitivity tests, all they test is the IgG, this column, the IgG. So they're missing all these other things. So they're missing the IgG4 and they're missing the complements. And you cannot, you can have a marker high in one of these and miss the other one. That's why this test is just so all encompassing. And do we have any more slides on this?
Yep, that's all I have on it.
God.
No, wait, there, no. Yeah, that is, I think.
Okay. But it's very important to get off these foods to calm the inflammation for at least 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to see this because it can change and you can hinder the healing of your gut if you keep on these foods you're sensitive to. So getting this test that has these 4 markers, I think is a game changer for a lot of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is another great test we love because it has the organic acids test within it, but it also looks at nutrient deficiencies and accesses. So, and it also looks at your amino acids, your oxidative stress, your metabolic and fatty acids, elemental markers, and heavy metals. I mean, it's a very robust test. Mm-hmm. And here's what it looks like, a little snippet. So here,
small snippet, right? Like a really big page test. I don't know how many pages you get the results, but yeah.
So here, this is a favorite one that's in every single hair supplement, biotin. You can get too much biotin. You can get too much of anything. Mm-hmm. People don't realize that. You can end up in the hospital just as badly as drinking too much alcohol. I mean, maybe not to that extent, but it's very important to see if you're too high or too low. Mm-hmm. So this test is going to show that. And then here's looking at, Selena, why don't you take it from here?
Yep, the fatty acids, yes, because this is, again, my pet peeve. I think you just click the next step and it should zoom in on your here. So on this right side, kind of what the example of the omega fatty acids. And this is a profile. I know this is one of their samples that they have, but I can't even tell you how many times we see this, Julie, right? Like where the left side, and this one actually, the left side, there is some low DHA, but on that right side, like the biggest thing you see there is that GLA. And I think if you click again, we'll have my arrow. There we go. The GLA right there. And then the next step is the DGLA. So when you look at these, both at omega-3 and omega-6, it's the conversion. So it starts at the top and then it's going to get converted to the next, to the next, to the next. So it's kind of like the domino effect of how these metabolites or these fats are going to get converted and used in the body. So when you see that GLA, you notice how it's over to the right. That's going to be elevated. But the next step down is crazy low. So that tells us that's not converting. And so what does that mean then? Well, we know that there are certain nutrients that are needed for that conversion process. We know, for instance, like insulin dysregulation will hinder this conversion process. There's, vitamin C, different B vitamins that are needed for this conversion process. So then we can start looking at, well, where are some of those missing elements at? What's the rest of these B vitamins? What's going on with insulin sensitivity and those things to understand, okay, what's going on with this conversion? And there are also, again, the genetic side where sometimes we are predisposed to to a slower conversion. But this is just a super important part. Like the fatty acids, I think, is one of the critical parts of not just hair growth, but again, every cell in our body, just like the thyroid, is dependent on healthy fatty acids. Like that's part of the cellular membranes is fats. We need fat. So if we don't have a good balance of omega-3s and omega-6s, then our cells are not going to work properly. We're going to have problems with transport. We're going to have problems with repair. There's just so many things. But this is, I think, one of our favorite sections. I mean, really, every section, there's just like the NutriVal, there's just so many great things about it. But this is one of the things we see so often is they're just not converting the GLA to DGLA.
And also, I want to mention that our cell membranes are the ears of our cells. So think of it like this, and they can't communicate to each other.
Oh, I love that.
Whether they have too much or too little. And it's interesting. We just had a client on board with us a couple months ago. She has RA, and she was taking so many omega-3s because she thought it would dampen the inflammation. RA causes pain, of course. So she thought of course, but that's just what the general public is told. They're not told about the balance of omega-3s and omega-6s. Because they push each other out. They fight for space. And it's so we're trying to tell you here also, a lot of you are probably pretty educated, you've been to a lot of these summits, but we look at things different way. We look at leaky gut differently. We look at the nutrients differently. And so it's so important though, if you want to keep your hair, if you want to grow your hair, you need these healthy fats. You need them, and not just the omega-3s. And even the Udi who spoke on my summit, who's a legend, the guy's 75 years old, but he told a story about how he got too high of omega-3s and he started losing hair. Yeah. And then he winded back, and that's why he created that flaxseed oil. So it's important to look at everything to keep your body in balance. And that's why, again, that's why this program is long lasting, but you have to do it in order.
Yeah, you got to get that to understand what pieces. Yeah, you got to have all the pieces to put the puzzle together.
Okay, and then here's the Dutch test that looks at hormone imbalances, and it's interesting because the thing that we really like to look on here is the DHT that often goes down the wrong path. We don't have it on this.
Oh, I don't have it on the slide, do I? No. I think because we have it on the insulin slide above is probably why I didn't put it here.
But that's often from an imbalanced gut, dysbiosis, or stress, or even drinking too much coffee. That can elevate your DHT. So, but this looks at it. It's a pretty crazy test to analyze.
Yeah, and the right side, so the one on the right, I'm going to look at like your hormones, like the sex hormones, your cortisol has a decent cortisol test. I mean, I do prefer the saliva for cortisol, but the urine is still pretty decent. But then like on the right side here, where you're going to see like your estrogen, you have like 3 different types of estrogen. Then you have that the E1, the estrone. That's what can go towards that unhealthy, the type of estrogen we think about cancer a lot of times, or some of these, chronic diseases. So this page is just super important for those who have a history or who are concerned about their estrogen metabolism, because this can kind of show us what's going on with estrogen metabolism, methylation, detox. And there was a great question that somebody asked, what's methylation? So these are the pathways where our body is going to take the nutrients, convert them. And then we have something called SAMe, and that SAMe is going to go attach to an enzyme, or is a kind of a cofactor for another enzyme in our body. And it's going to change and kind of let that enzyme work. So it's kind of, that's what methylation, I guess, is a simple way to describe that. And so we can look and see on this test, how some of our genes are operating, like those CYPs you see there on the green, red, and blue line, those are genes. That COMT on the very bottom, and I should have blown this up so we can see it better, but the very bottom kind of going horizontally there, that COMT is a gene. And so it not only is in estrogen, but that COMT is over in our dopamine pathway. So then we start thinking about whenever we have PMS issues or issues with our cycles and things that are like neuro-related with symptoms, irritability, anxiety, and depression and those things. Well, that's also part of that dopamine pathway. So the estrogen has to go through that COMT gene, the same does other things that goes through that. So this is just nice to see how those genes are actually operating. So it's another great test.
Okay, and actually we're running out of time.
Oh, so no, we are. We're going to quick.
Bottom line here is we personalize your labs. And depending on your initial consult and what you haven't done, how recent they are, and then determine further detective work in labs if necessary. It's just really important as far as the next step. So the next step is nourishment and finding quality food that can change not only your taste buds, but the health of your gut and your hair health can be a difficult challenge. So the action steps includes a rainbow of colors and eliminates added sugars. But if your body is running from a lion, you can do all this right and your hair is still not going to grow. But working with someone who's been in your shoes, where are those slides?
Go back, Julie. Just go back. Say where you're at.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So this is what the slide. These are the food. I'm gonna have a bunch of recipes. Over 59 recipes for the 12-week program, and 12-week meal plans. So it'll include shopping lists and handouts and a food diary so that you can actually not have to think about it much. But as we were saying, if you're stressed out and whatever is going on in your life, so we have a whole module on stress, because you're not going to absorb these nutrients. You can eat this great meal plan I put together for you and put together these simple recipes for hair health. But if you're still stressed out, you're not going to absorb these nutrients, and it's going to your hair's not going to grow. Mm-hmm. So yeah, working with me, I've been there. I've done that. And I really want to empower you to control your hair loss and health. And there's no Band-Aid. So let's do this together. No more being overwhelmed, feeling alone and hopeless or defeated. And this is a snippet of what's in our program. This is in both our 4-week and our 12-week. So there's live sessions walking you through the steps, live virtual sessions like today, but it'll be, you'll be able to ask questions differently. Meal plans, grocery lists, recipes, handouts, worksheets. You're gonna have to do some work. Lifetime supplement discounts from practitioner grade dispensary. And there's going to be private community support. And then we're going to also, in the 12-week program, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have 3 functional labs. And we're going to go over the lab results in 3 different sessions. And we're going to black out your names so that no one can see that. So it's HIPAA compliant. And if you are interested, there's the link, healthyhairfix.com, if you want to sign up. So I went over this. And you're definitely getting a ton of stuff. So in the 3-month program, here are some basic overview steps. So the first month, we're going to eliminate those common allergens, the inflammatory sensitive foods within the recipes. So it's done for you. You don't have to think about it. Boom, here's your meal plan. Here are the recipes. You get a meal plan and shopping list every week. You learn how to track your food intake and identify triggers that could be causing. A lot of times it's not the usual, some people think only if my stomach's upset or something, that's a food sensitivity. No, it could be you have insomnia, or you have stress, or you have pain in your joints, or there's so many things that food sensitivities can cause, not only hair loss, but they cause inflammation. So it's different in different people. So I'm going to help you track it. And then also it includes healing food. The second month, I'll introduce more healing foods, spices, and drinks. And again, you'll receive another 4 weeks, but a week at a time because these sessions, they're starting next week and they'll be every week until
I think the next slide is probably where those are at. Right?
Okay. And then so it's more that we personalize it for your lifestyle. So when the program ends, you know the foods that you can eat that are gonna not only help you optimize your health, but grow your hair. But it's different for everyone. So we'll personalize it and customize it for you. But we're going to go off these meal plans I put together for healthy hair.
Mhm.
And here's a sneak preview of the modules. So the first module is solving the root cause of hair loss. And unlocking your hair's potential, because again, it is a gift, but we need to do some detective work. And I love that. It's opening a package for me when I look at someone's
It's like a
lab
double gift, right? So you got the gift.
Yeah,
of
that's my other gift.
Like, yeah. The gift of like digging into the cases. I mean, oh my goodness, you're right. That's a gift in itself too.
We love doing this.
We do. We both do.
Do you want to talk about these?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Next module, like, then we're going to talk about, so the next one, it basically like leads you through all the steps we just talked about. Like, how do you do this detective work? What are the actual action steps to move from point A to B? And so the next one we're going to start digging into the identifying a little bit deeper. And then how do you nourish? And then how do you feed your genes? Like, how do we influence our genes? And then the stress connection. I mean, stress is so important. And it's not that we manage stress. We need to transform stress, and we can't avoid stress. There's going to be stress. I mean, just breathing creates stress. Stress is anything that causes a change in our body. And so there's good stress and bad stress. So what can we do to, resolve stress, that our stress not, completely unraveling everything and causing problems? And then we're going to go deeper into digestive health, which is, again, we both love. Then we're going to start going over some of these stool tests, or the testing, like, a personalized stool test, and really teach you how to look at these things. When you get test results, you understand them a lot better. Inflammation, we're going to dig into a lot of the inflammation, the inflammatory markers, functionally looking at labs, organic acids, nutrient testing, hormones, and how do we harmonize our hormones? And then, we're going to wrap up. And then actually there's more we're going to do, I think, in module 12. I think we even have more bonus stuff we're going to do, because we just couldn't stop. And then backwards. You went
gosh, I'm like so crazy with this.
Yeah. Okay. The e-guides. Yeah, your mouse is like crazy sensitive tonight.
Yeah.
Click. Oh, and the guides. And then this is, I think, the most important part, right, Julie? I think you probably want to talk about this. No one else offers this. So this is, again, one of our pet peeves, is that it has to be personalized, yet we can't put together a protocol that's going to work for all of you. You have different types of hair loss. And so for us, it's really important that we talk with you one-on-one, that Julie talks with you, or I, or someone else in our team talks with you to see what is your case, like what is it that you're going to need. And so we're including a one-on-one case strategy with.
We have two of those.
Package.
Yeah.
And
in the 12
week, package. The 12, the 12 one is too, but that is, I think, vital for any of these, because, just taking a protocol with not knowing some of the nuances to your case. Like, what if you're one of those people that, hey, turmeric really causes problems? Don't want to give you something with turmeric in it, right? Or if you're one that, hey, turmeric is a game changer for you, we want to make sure that we are really helping to support that pathway. So that's, I think, is just super important that, that is something else that we're offering.
Yeah. And before we go there, if you sign up for a package, we're going to have you fill out these forms so we know what tests you might have already done. A lot of you probably have done some functional labs, and maybe you've done some recent blood work. So we need to know what you've already done. Again, it goes back to, we're not just offering a package with, these are the labs and have a nice day. No, we are personalizing even what we're offering. Mm-hmm. So let's jump in here.
Session is so important. And the intake. Yeah. So, yeah.
So these are the two packages. This first one for $447 does not have any labs, but it does have the 4 modules, 4 live Zoom sessions. It does have 1 case study strategy set. This is a one-on-one session. And it does have the meal plans, recipes, shopping lists, and all the other resources. We have a ton of resources, handouts.
Resources. Yeah. Basically everything you need. Like, there's not really anything else. It's all the resources we've used between the clients that we've been working with for, I don't know, however many years now. Like, you're getting basically all of them. So yeah.
And either of these packages, you get a lifetime supplement discount. Mm-hmm. If depending on what supplements we use for you and so forth. I use different, there's one main dispensary I use, but I also use some other supplement companies, but you'll get that lifetime discount from all of them. And this really is the best value. I mean, I can't even, I'm like speechless. I can't even talk how good of a value this is.
Did we put together a list of the actual test, the potential test? Is that on the slide? I don't think that we did we?
No, we didn't put that in.
So the test, if we like on there, things like the GI map, nutrient testing, like the NutriVal, organic acids, heavy metals, Dutch testing, the functional blood work. So there's just going to be a whole list of potential tests at these three, functional labs. And so like, for instance, that functional health report with that blood work, that's what I think, I don't remember how many labs it is, but it's a whole bunch of things of that whole, there's a whole slide there that has what's on that test. That would be considered one test. And like your GI map or something, NutriVal. So there's different tests to choose from. But like Julie said, we want to understand your case before we just say, go take this test. Like, what if you don't need something? It's just a waste of your time. You need stuff that actually gives you valuable information for your case. And so, the labs will be decided once we kind of see all your intake and what all, what you've done. Like she said, many of you have probably had a lot of tests. And so let's look at those and see, what are they telling us? Where are their missing pieces? Where do you maybe need to retest, or what have you not explored? Those kinds of things.
Also, and even with the blood test, you might have had some blood tests, but they said they test your thyroid, but they usually just test the TSH.
Yeah.
But we're going to do a whole thyroid panel, and same what we're going to do a whole iron panel. Those are so important for hair health. And we have to look at the saturation, because iron can be too high or it can be too low. It has to have that sweet spot. Same with a lot of the thyroid markers, and the other labs we do. So again, we're going to look at these through a functional lens. We're going to tailor it for you, and you don't have to figure out what to eat for 12 weeks. And it's an amazing deal. But we really want to do it because we really want to help a lot of people. There's nothing else out there like this for hair loss. So you can jump on it by going to healthyhairfix.com within the next 48 hours. And then the price is going up.
Yep. And then let's get to questions. There's a bunch of questions. So let's jump into I guess we were able to get it quickly. We both like to talk and give a lot of information. So there's a ton of questions here. So let me see what we've got. If you go to the next slide there, or you want to leave this one up, is fine. Either one. There we go. Okay. I just love the stairs. I mean, that just reminds me, basically, this is the journey, right? There's just all these different crossroads and all these different steps that we got to take. And it's outside, it's just outdoors, and reminds me of mountains and stuff. Okay. So question here. We are going to also open up for people to ask, like on their microphones and things. If you want to raise your hands, we will get you on that. But let me just run through what's in the chat real quick.